Welcome to our second training video. If you want to learn about listening, that's online too. You can go and check that out. But often when we think about doing ministry with young people, we might think about what do we need to do? What is important? What is the focus? You can get caught up with entertaining them and wanting them to be with us, but surely there's more to it than that. When I was in Brisbane, working initially in a group of churches that were thinking about coming together and then working in an amalgamated group, as we were looking to come together, we were thinking about what will we do with our young people? And there was a suggestion of let's have a framework that we work within. And through some suggestions, we came up with using Here2Stay. Here2Stay is an Australian idea and framework put together by a number of different people from different denominations, different groups such as Scripture Union in Queensland. That material says what we aim to do is to produce lifelong faith in young people. And isn't that what we want? We don't want just them to come to church and think we're cool. We want them to have this faith that we have and for it to last their life, to be growing and active. So great, that's what we wanted. Here2Stay came up with a framework that says there are 2 foundations and then 8 pillars, 8 things that if young people are doing these, then their faith is probably growing. The 2 foundations are, number 1, faith formation happening in the home, or they say family, household, nurture. So we want faith to be happening at home, those faith conversations happening between parents and children. If that's happening, all the research says, then we're likely to see faith grow. So how do we help those family connections? The second thing is generational connections. We want the generations to be mixing, for older people to be walking alongside the younger people, to be learning from the young people, but also to be supporting them. So we want those connections. Those are 2 key foundations. We need faith formation to be happening in the family. We need intergenerational connection. Not just we've paid a youth leader, but that the older people in the church are connecting with the younger people. And then 8 pillars, 8 things that we do it. And this has really come to mind for me because the last few weeks we've been looking at resurrection appearances of Jesus and encounters. And so last week as I was preaching in Merriwar, I focused into this because it was encountering Jesus. As Thomas said, I need to see. How do we help our young people encounter? So here are the 8 pillars. I'm going to go through them quickly. If you're interested, talk to me, or we might unpack it through some more training if you want. Let me know what you want to train. Some of you will go, we saw this last year when we came along to my training on faith formation in young people. Yes, you did. That's why I think this is so important. So number 1 is serve in mission. And what they say is this: we need to encourage the broad spectrum of ages to be involved in mission. We need to encourage families to serve together. This provides all ages to use their gifts, to put their faith into action, and to see the power of God firsthand. This can be overseas or in our local communities. The need is great. We are called in deed and in word to share God's love. So we want not just to do mission with young people, we want young people to be involved in mission. How are they part of it? We might see that most commonly as youth working in children's ministry, children's outreach programs, stuff like that. But that's not for all of them. How are we helping our young people to serve in mission and serve alongside, particularly alongside their parents, but alongside other adults? So number 1, serving in mission. Number 2, God's big story. They say this: every part of the Bible, each event, book, character, commands, prophecy, and column needs to be understood in the context of one storyline. God's big story has never changed. It was always his plan for us to be a part of it. It is also important to remember that it is his story, not ours. We're simply privileged to play a small role. So we want to help our young people to understand the whole breadth of Scripture, that whole big story, but that God's big story doesn't end there, but continues on with them. I always love the start of Mark's gospel, where Mark says, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, which could be, here's the beginning of the book that I'm writing, or that this book is the beginning of all that Jesus is doing and is continuing to do through you, the reader. And so we want young people to understand God's big story, to understand that they are part of God's big story. So crucial. Number 3 is encounters with Jesus. This is the one I was looking at on the weekend. They say this: within our faith community and our household of faith, we need to be intentional about providing spaces to encounter Jesus, to create spaces to hear from God, to encounter him together, and to share our stories and encounters with each other. We feel we are so time poor that it's about being intentional and making this a priority in our life. So how do we allow our young people space and time to encounter God? How do we have those moments of silence? How do we not overstimulate and overpack our programs so there is downtime and time that they might just encounter Jesus? Because that's so key, that as they encounter Jesus, their faith becomes real, as they understand they follow this real God. So how do we allow those encounters? We can't necessarily manufacture them, but we need to allow those spaces and times and to be intentional about allowing those spaces and times. The 4th one is respond with compassion. They say this: how do we help children to respond to the needs they see when they feel so powerless? We all need to be prepared to take some risks, expose ourselves to the brokenness, and allow the Spirit of God to work through us all. This will be a model to our kids and the world around us that needs us to respond with the compassion of Jesus. How do we do that? As a church, sometimes we see that as someone is sick and we provide them a meal. So how do we involve the young people in that? Do they go along with us and help to take that meal? Do they help to cook the meal? Do they help to come up with the menu? How do we respond with compassion to things that are happening around the world, to those who are in need? Young people can be part of that and need to be part of that as they grow their faith. Number 5, positive peer community. Summed up as this: as children grow in age, the influence and importance of the peer group becomes more dominant, often at the expense of parental influence. This underlines the importance of creating positive peer environments for our children, but this is also true of any age. So we want those groups where young people are mixing in a positive way with others of their age. So when I and others talk about intergenerational, we're not saying there is never a space for age-specific programs. Of course there are. We need our young people to be forming friendships with those who are following in the faith as well, who are wrestling and exploring, but have that similar essence and that similar goal of we want faith. And so we need to provide those spaces for our young people to be mixing and growing. Youth groups and stuff are so important, so helpful for that positive peer community. Number 6, peak experiences, summed up like this: a peak experience is a vital complement to the regular activities within the faith community. A peak experience is a place where God meets you, stretches and inspires you, when he comes close to you and you come close to him, and transformation happens. Those peak experiences. That's why I went along to the youth camp last year, Synod Youth Camp. I want to be there to make sure our young people are getting to go to camp and have peak experiences. In Brisbane, there was a state youth camp, and as we were trying to promote it with the young people, I had a number of adults come up and say, we're willing to pay for people to go because camps were so important in our growing up. We want our young people to experience that. Can you help a young person get to camp? How do we provide those experiences? It might be camp, it might be a number of other things. Just going, let's go and sit at the beach and watch the sunrise on Easter morning or something like that. That can be a peak experience. How do we make sure our young people can experience those things? The next one, mentoring and coaching. They describe it as thus: life is not meant to be journeyed alone, but together in community. The challenge of mentoring and coaching is that it requires time to listen, time to encourage, time to be available, time to be accepting. It requires time. Time is precious today, but spending time walking with someone else is what we're called to do. I think it would be wonderful if everyone in the church had a mentor, but particularly if every young person had a mentor who met with them regularly. Not someone who's going to come and tell them what they need to do, but someone who's going to come and listen and walk alongside and question and explore. And through those questions, the young person might work out what they need to do in a particular situation. But it's not the older person telling them, but exploring and discovering with them. How do we have those people who can mentor, who can coach our young people? Maybe one-on-one, maybe in groups, maybe just that sense of, you're working with me on the tech desk and I'll chat with you. And as I help you with the tech desk, I just check on how you're going in life. You might even not even know that I'm mentoring you, but I'm mentoring you. How do we provide those people around young people? And lastly, rites of passage. They summarise it as anticipating, honouring and celebrating transitions and rites of passage for all ages is important. This is something we need to be intentional about. It needs to be public and an event, an experience that can become an anchor in the person's life. This anchor can become something that helps them to stay on track with God when times are tough. So how do we take those moments of life? Many cultures have rites of passage. We've lost that a lot in Australia. In the church, in that sense, confirmation is sort of our one rite of passage in the United Church. How do we give more? How do we acknowledge those moments in life, starting school, graduating, getting your license, being able to vote, all those things? How do we go, this is a moment that is special and God is with you in this moment and God is guiding you in this moment? How do we help that to show that all of life is about faith and spirituality and that God is always with them? And so doing these things will help us and help our young people to grow in their faith. Now, as I've talked and as you've looked, you might sit there and go, hey, that applies to everyone. And yes, it does. As we were rolling this out at Southside in Brisbane, as we were coming together, our lead minister said, Richard, that applies to adults as well. Yes. And then a couple of years ago, I was involved with a working group in the Queensland Synod who were looking at what we do with faith with young people. And one of our goals was to roll out the Here2Stay material. And then the general discipleship group that was looking at discipleship for adults and stuff across the church heard this, looked at it, and they went, we want that. And they reworked it to be the discipleship model that would be rolled out across the church in Queensland for everyone. That these are the 8 core pillars, the 2 foundations. The Queensland model moved them all into just 10 big things we need to hold on to. But this here to stay. That if we can be doing these things, then what can we do? Our young people's faith will grow. So for me, back in Southside, when I would report, our report form had at the top, we needed matrix. How do we show what's been happening? And so instead of going, we had this many at youth group and this many at kids club, and I went, let's work through those 8 pillars and go, this is what we did. We went to Easter Madness. There was a peak experience. When working on mentoring and coaching, we're not really there yet, but we need to get there, and so on. And so we can see, here's what we're doing well, here's where we need to work. We may not hit them all right away. We may not hit them every year. But if we can start to focus on how are we doing these 8 things and the 2 foundations, then maybe our young people's faith will continue to grow and will grow in amazing ways. So I encourage you to check out Here2Stay. You can find their website, Here2Stay. Has information on each of those, videos about them, suggestions about how you might do them. If this piques your interest, talk to me. I can come and talk to you, come and talk to your church about it. In these armchair trainings, we can do more of these if you want. We can unpack each one. Let me know what you're thinking. Comment on the videos. Message me. Always open for dialogue and thought. Hopefully it's got you thinking. I think it's a wonderful framework and great for helping us to think about how we work with our young people. Thanks, and see you again for some more training next month.